Now let's talk about governance. A very, very popular utility. Pretty much every single project has governance because they think that governance will add a lot of value to their token. It doesn't, just to let you know right off the bat. Nobody cares about governance other than a few whales and investors, right? Everyone else, the normal user, the normal person, they come in and they use your product and service. They don't care about governing or making decisions. That doesn't. Why would they do that? They're there to use your product, right? Or again, or your service. Governance does not add much value whatsoever. But it is good if you have, if you're a B2B project or you have a lot of institutions or you're a big infrastructure play. Like there have been some big votes on Solana recently where a lot of their whales and VCs partook in the governance because it impacted them quite a lot. But just as a baseline, governance generally does not add any value because nobody cares about it, right? Particularly when talking about retail. So, but that said, it can be very good, right? It's not good if that's the thing that you rely on to give you a $500 million market cap, right, from all your retail investors. The governance is going to do that. However, it is good if you are truly decentralized or you're a big infrastructure project and you want to make sure that everyone has a say. So governance fundamentally is good. A lot of people just use it badly. And also a lot of people design it badly as well. It doesn't have to be complicated, but let's talk about the different structures, what the proposals can be, who makes them, and how the actual structure for the governance works. So, not the structure, but how the actual voting process happens. So different structures. Back in the day, we had a vote. Let's say, should we do this, right? And then everyone would come into the big voting hall, the town hall, back in the Roman Empire or whatever, right? They will come in and they will say yes or no, and someone here would count all the votes up, and they will say, okay, well, 2,000 people said yes, and then 1,000 people said no, so therefore we are passing this. Nowadays, this is not happening, right? There's way too many people. We have, in London, there's 8 million people. You can't expect all these people to come into the town hall and vote, right? It doesn't make sense. Logistically, that's never going to happen. So now we have what's known as a representative democracy. And this is the same across every single country ever. Well, unless it's a dictatorship, of course. But all these people, what they do is they vote for someone to represent them. And then these are the people that actually vote on the potential policies, right? On any changes that are being discussed in government. So this is generally your politicians, right? Your politicians. These are your politicians, your governors, your House of Representatives, your MPs, members of Parliament, wherever they are in your country. This is a representative democracy. This is how it works, right? What crypto has allowed us to do, however, is, well, it's not really crypto has allowed us to do, but because we're not voting on, the economics of a country, because we're just voting on what a project does, right? Which isn't anywhere near as important. You're not going to have adversary countries coming in to hack you, whatever. You can allow people to just vote directly, right? And, of course, if you tie in your token to that, then that makes sense. One key caveat, of course, is you're literally saying, if governance is the main utility for your token, you are literally saying, hey, my token is a security because you have just defined equity, right? I have tokens, I come in and I vote, is the exact same as I have equity, I'm now, I have a seat at the table of your kind of board of shareholders, whatever it's called, right? Your token is equity by that point, right? So be very careful on how you word things, how you design the governance structures, but just to let you know, right, pretty much every token in crypto is a security anyway, it's just no one really has caught up to that fact yet, whatever. Governance in crypto is a direct kind of democracy. So everyone that holds a token or has a token or however you design it can come in and they can vote yes or no on different decisions. Now, what are these decisions, right? By the way, sorry, you can still have a representative democracy, right? Like for example, Ethena, you vote for a committee, like the members of a committee, and there's 6 of them, and then you vote for whoever you want to be on that committee. Of course, they have to apply first, and you vote out the people who applied. And then these are the people who are actually deciding yes or no or yes, right, on different decisions. But you don't actually have an ability to vote on the proposals yourself. So some projects have this representative democracy structure. The vast majority of them just do direct democracy, right, which makes a bit more sense, but whatever. So just for clarity, it makes a bit more sense because why even have governance if you're just going to have a board of directors anyway? You may as well just give those people it's just a bit weird. Because you may as well give them equity and then you just have them vote, or whatever, regardless. Now, what are the proposals? This is where things get interesting. So firstly, you need to understand whether they're cosmetic or they're functional. So if it's cosmetic, this is what a lot of projects offer, right? Is they offer cosmetic kind of decisions to their retail users, right? So what this means is they say, all right, well, you can decide what is the next gun skin that we're going to introduce into the game, or you can decide the color of the NFTs, or you can decide the website that we're going to go with. These things are cosmetic, and not a single person on this planet will care. Nobody's going to vote for this. It's garbage. That's it. No one cares about what's the next gun you're going to add to the gun skin you're going to add to the game. Of course, again, I'm being facetious. Some people will care, and you might have some people voting. But generally speaking, what are you doing? Just make the decision. It's not. Why do you have this as an option? You can. Don't get me wrong. For games, sure, maybe you're deciding on what character to add. You give that proposal to the team, to the community. But that's what. Games do that anyway already in Web 2. You don't need the token for that. You don't need governance for that. It's just a bit weird, right? Just do that on a Reddit forum or on a Telegram channel. You just have people vote on a poll, or on Twitter. Just do a poll. It's just weird. Don't do that. It's pointless. Functional is the important one. So this is, for example, when you vote on adapting fees structures, or you vote on the potential APY, or you vote on other key mechanics within the protocol. Maybe you have lending and borrowing, so you vote on the over collateralization ratio. There's very functional mechanics, and you can put that up to the vote to the people who are using your protocol. The good thing about this is that people have a say. The bad thing about this is that if people are voting in a way that doesn't really benefit the project, well, then the project will have to take all their tokens and vote against the people, which therefore makes the entire thing pointless, right? People will generally vote for whatever benefits them most. If you have a proposal where where the project isn't the other side, it's not taking the other side of the bet, right? It's just either we do this or this, but the project is unaffected, but it's still quite functional. Then fine. Then giving that to the people is good. But you need to be careful that you don't allow people to create proposals or to vote on proposals in a way that will damage the project or your revenue or, whatever else, because people don't know what you know. You have the backend data. You can run models and simulations on your users' revenues, your profit margins, projections, whatever. You have an understanding of everything, right? People don't, because they don't care, but also they don't have the data that you have. So giving these very critical functional proposals to the community can come with a lot of risks. So you have to be careful with what proposals you're putting out there, or what you allow people to make. And that's kind of point number 3. It's you don't want to allow the community to be making very functional proposals, because again, they can vote on them, they can all support it. Like, for example, reduce the fee from 1% to 0%, right? You will then have to come in and vote against that, right? Which just makes governance pointless. But if the team is the one that's making the proposals, well, you have the data. Why don't you just decide yourself? Why are you asking people who don't have the data, who don't care that much about a very critical functional element of of your protocol? Again, it makes sense in some cases. Solana just had very big votes recently. On Ethereum, there are a lot of big votes that happen. It makes sense in some cases, but you just need to be careful. You need to be careful with what you allow people to vote on, with who can make the proposals and what type of proposals they can make, and how much power the people have when it comes to certain topics. You just need to be very careful about that. The next point is concave or convex decisions. This is also something very critical that a lot of people don't really know. I've got this from Vitalik, one of Vitalik's blogs. And long story short, there are 2 types of decisions that you can make, right? Or there are 2 types of kind of decisions that can be made, rather, sorry. So you have, let me see if I can just copy and paste, there we go. So on this side, here we have, just looking just to confirm I get this right, how good the outcome would be. Right? How good the outcome would be. I can make this a bit smaller, maybe make this 14. There we go. How good the outcome would be. And of course, it's the same here as well. And then over here is we have the policy chosen. So we have option A. Then over here we have option B, just like that. Okay. The policy chosen is just like, it just says either it's option A or option B. And now we can, of course, copy and paste this for this chart, just like that. That comma B, just like that. Perfect. Okay. So these are the two types of decisions. You have a concave decisions like that, and you have convex decisions like that. Let me just write that here. Concave and convex. Okay. So let's look at what this means, right? A concave decision is, for example, should we allocate our $500 billion tax kind of budget, right? Our tax revenue budget to defense or to social care? Option A is defense, just purely defense. Option B is purely social care. You allocate 100% to either one or the other. As you can see here, this chart just tells us that somewhere in the middle is best. You don't want to allocate all of your money to, you know, social care. You also don't want to allocate all of your money to defense. You want to be somewhere in between, somewhere in the middle. Maybe 50 billion that way, or sorry, maybe 200 billion that way, 300 billion that way, or whatever it is, right? These decisions generally are good to put out for the public. There is something known as the wisdom of the crowds, which is that people on average, if you ask enough people, will, you know, if you out and then average out their answer, you'll probably find like the most accurate and the best way forward, right? It's actually a very interesting concept. I recommend check it out if you don't know about it, wisdom of the crowds. But in this case, if the decision is somewhere in between, it's good to have governance, because you're saying, hey, my entire community, all, you know, 100,000 of you, 1 million of you, whatever, why don't you all come together? Why don't we vote on this? Because we're not sure, and we know that somewhere in between is better. Maybe people vote, you know, like that. Maybe people vote like that. And then you can see, okay, well, here is best, here is best. You will generally get the best outcome when you have a lot of people voting on a concave decision. Now, convex decisions, on the other hand, are something like, for example, which route should we take? You get in the car, you have a destination, which route should you take? Should you go down the highway or should you go down the scenic route? The highway, of course, will get you to the destination much faster. The scenic route will be more enjoyable to drive. One of these two options is best. Doing both doesn't make sense. You don't want to do 50-50 because neither of your kind of desired outcomes are fully achieved. And that is the key point. If you have 1 hour until you need to be at your destination, and you know the highway is a 40-minute drive, but the scenic route is 1 hour 30, you have the information, you have the back end kind of context that you need to be somewhere in 1 hour, and you cannot take the scenic route because you're going to be late. So you have to take the highway. It's a very quick and fast decision that you don't need 1 million people to vote on to decide. You don't need to wait hours. It's a quick decision. You know, this is the outcome that we need. This is the option that we're going to go for. On the flip side, maybe you have 3 hours until you need to be somewhere. So, you know, you have a lot of time to go on the scenic route, or maybe you have kids or a wife or whatever that want to take photos. You want to show them the environment. Of course, you're going to take the scenic route, right? There's no point taking the highway. You have the data, the back-end data, the contextual understanding of the situation, of what's going on, what's going to happen, for you to make a decision. You do not need governance, right? Because people would be like, the average of these two options would be here, right? Some people say take the highway, some people say take the scenic route, and you're going to be left in the middle. It doesn't make sense. These decisions are not to be made with a group of people. There is no wisdom of the crowds here. This is meant to be made with a small group of people who have the data and have the information, and they know how to proceed, right? Most companies, most decisions in the company are convex, right? There are barely any concave decisions when it comes to businesses. So I would say, unless you have a very good specific reason for why you want governance and what you want people to govern, just avoid it. A lot of your decisions will be convex, right? And you don't need people to come in and vote on them. Now, who makes the proposal? Again, we kind of discussed already. And finally, is how do the votes occur? Now this is where you start thinking about the actual policy for the governance, right? Because there's different ways. For example, token per vote is, do you want to say that one token equals one vote? Right? You can do, but then there are cons to that. For example, any whales and massive VCs who have, you know, millions of tokens, they will just come in and they will outvote any retail investors. Right? They will win whatever they want to win. This again happened recently on Solana with one of their recent big proposals. We have a post and article about it. What if then, you know, to balance it out, to not have essentially an aristocracy where the rich just decide what happens, you have some sort of conviction voting process, or, you know, locking your tokens up to increase the weight of your vote. So for example, you know, you may have only 10,000 tokens, but you lock them up for 12 months with a particular vote. Conviction voting is from Polkadot. Very interesting mechanic, by the way. I really like it quite a lot. Because you lock them up for 12 months, you actually have a 100x multiplier on all your votes. So now all of a sudden you actually have 1 million votes basically for this particular proposal. So you have this kind of like conviction voting, or just some other way of, you know, you lock your tokens for 6 months, you have a 5x, you know, weight increase on your votes, however you want to design it. Conviction voting specifically is for a particular proposal. So you lock your tokens up within a proposal, whereas here by lock weight, I just mean, you know, maybe you just in general stake and lock your tokens for 6 months, and then you have a increased weight for all of your, all of the votes that you enact. It's a good way to balance out aristocracy and to make sure that the whales are not just absolutely dominating, because the average retail investor, they still have a chance to, you know, kind of to outvote the whales because of this. Another key question is, you know, should you just do one token equals one vote, or maybe you want to have a governance token? So for example, you stake the token, right, into a liquidity pool, and then your reward for that is a governance version of the token, and then you can use this governance version of a token for actual governance, right? Maybe that's the way that you do this. This is something that Berachain has done with their kind of flywheel. I know Berachain is, you know, not doing too well, but this is one of the ways that they had their economy designed, and it's very, very smart, because it means that the only people with the governance tokens are the ones that are providing real value to the project, right? Alternatively, maybe you want to have governance in the way that anyone just has one vote. So whether they have one token, whether they have 1 million tokens, whatever, you have one wallet, you know, one wallet equals one vote. Maybe it's something like that. There are different ways that you can design this. And again, different pros and cons. With this, for example, it means that, you know, people have to participate in the LP to become governors, and maybe some VCs don't want to participate in LP, but, you know, there's a proposal that will affect them quite a lot. So you know, you can argue it's a little bit unfair. For this, you know, again, for example, maybe the whales can do the exact same thing, right? Like a whale can just lock his tokens up for 1 month, and all of a sudden, you know, his 1 million votes is now 10 million votes. So you still kind of outweigh retail. So you have to design that well, so it's fair for the whales, but also fair for retail. And neither of them have a particular say. Because the thing is, the whales also, they're the ones that are buying a lot of the tokens, right? So they should have a bigger say at the end of the day. They're probably paying you much larger fees for trading or whatever, because they trade with much greater volume. You know, they also hold a lot more of your tokens. So what they say actually is more important than what retail says, like a retail user with 10,000 tokens compared to someone with 1 million. But there's a lot more retail holders, you know, so you have to just balance things out. You have to make sure that your multipliers, the times for the conviction voting, how exactly is that token per vote? Is that token for 100 votes? Is there some sort of multipliers? Like, for example, for validators, you know, if you're a validator, you have some voting power, but then if you have delegators to your validator, then you should have higher voting power, because you're kind of responsible for a greater portion of users. There are different ways that you can design this, but just make sure that whatever you design, just think about it, right? I have a video on the policies, which just think about the extremes, and that will allow you to design the correct policy with the correct kind of systems, the correct weights and whatever else. Watch the video on policy design to understand how to do that. But this is governance. Generally a fine utility, but in a lot of cases, people just misuse it and they just think that this is the saving grace. It's not, and no one really cares about governance. especially retail. But whenever people do, it's generally for big infrastructure projects, and those projects are voting on concave decisions, right? And everything else that's convex is just the teams. They just do the changes, the updates, whatever. So this is governance, and stay tuned for the next one.